Welcome back. This is Mystery Truth. 6 questions we need to ask about Afghanistan. Afghanistan has fallen. That's the line. The Taliban forces have taken the opportunity of the US/NATO withdrawal and swept across the entire country, taking every major city within a week and with barely a shot fired. Joe Biden is being blamed for his lack of plans, even as Democrats try and shift the blame to Trump, who first decided to pull the US out of Afghanistan over 18 months ago. Meanwhile, the press are reporting dozens of stories about the humanitarian crisis, refugees fleeing their new regime, the fate of women under the Taliban, and the shocking videos of desperate people. That's the official story. But what's really going on? The first question is, did the Taliban really just win? Firstly, let's be clear here. The US has not pulled out of Afghanistan, not in the true sense of the phrase. They still reserve the right to bomb the place. There are still private contractors in the country, and the Pentagon are already booking their return tickets. Secondly, the Taliban didn't win. They were unopposed. More than unopposed, they were directly aided. When the US abandoned Bagram Air Base, they left hundreds of armored vehicles, weapons, and over 5,000 alleged Taliban prisoners, all of which accidentally fell into the hands of the advancing Taliban forces. The Afghan army, under command of US puppet President Ashraf Ghani, essentially folded without a shot being fired. Tens of thousands of US trained and armed troops did nothing to stop the advance of the enemy. There are a lot of articles in the MSM endeavoring to explain this. The Guardian and the Telegraph, the Financial Times and the Non-Financial Times, they all give it a go. The Washington Post Max Booth, writing for the Council on Foreign Relations, ties himself in mental knots trying to explain how the Afghan army, with superior numbers and firepower, collapsed under pressure. The Independent reports that the billions the Pentagon spent on training Afghan security forces has accidentally benefited the Taliban, who have now seized vehicles, missiles, and aircrafts. The press clearly sees it for what it is, a hole in their story they really need to plug. Ceteris paribus, all things being equal, the simplest explanation is often the most likely, and the simplest explanation here is that the Afghan security forces were ordered to stand down as part of a deal with the Taliban. There are reports and rumors on social media of deals being done. And of course, the exact terms of the peace agreement signed by Trump and Taliban last year are not known. But it's interesting to note that this agreement actually called for a handover of exactly 5,000 Taliban prisoners, the same number accidentally left unguarded at Bagram Air Base. One interpretation is that the withdrawal has gone exactly as planned in the deal signed by Trump, and that the melodrama and the chaos of the pullout was either a part of the deal or a later addition to either cause a distraction or save some face. The second question is this: is the chaos real? The media have been generating memes to sell the chaos of the Taliban's advance. The go-to comparison has been the fall of Saigon, because the completely unintentional, near identical images went viral. We are treated to a lot of viral video footage, ranging from the questionable to the outright bizarre. All of this serves a purpose, aside from the distraction of emotive metaphors and lurid headlines. It all aids in the construction of a narrative. In this case, the ideas of US mistakes and incompetence and wishful thinking are discussed at length without ever touching on the true mendacity at the heart of the Afghan invasion. The end of the Afghan war is being used to rebrand its beginnings. The Taliban are propped up as villains, again and associated with Al-Qaeda, as if they were ever anything but a Western tool in the first place. People are talking about spreading democracy and counter-terrorism, as if they were the real aims of the war, instead of long discredited lies. Marketing Afghanistan as a defeat for the US camouflages the truth of it. The war was a very profitable business venture. And of course, it all serves to reinforce the frail official story of 9/11, a vital keystone in the construction of our geopolitical reality. The third question you need to ask, what about the Heroin? The press has a long history of not just lying about Afghan heroin, but totally inverting the truth. In 2019, for example, during the facetious leak of the Afghanistan papers, the press lamented the US failure to curb the opium trade. Afghanistan currently produces around 90% of global heroin. When the US invaded in 2001, that number was much closer to zero. The Taliban outlawed the growing of opium poppies in early 2001, and by the end of the year, the business was almost extinct. The US invaded in November 2001, and opium production has increased almost every year since then. We don't need to go into the CIA's links to the drug trade here, or how much money people have made from this heroin production. That's not relevant. What we need to ask is, what now? Will the newly reinstated Taliban put an end to this trade again, or will production continue? According to the press, the heroin will continue to flow. In fact, the Taliban will increase production because the illegal drug trade helps fuel them. Reuters reports that the US plans to halt heroin production failed, and that the opium trade is a boon for the Taliban. The Telegraph headlines that Taliban moves flooding the West with heroin to shore up Afghan economy. So we should be prepared for the illegal heroin trade to increase now the US has withdrawn from Afghanistan. But the idea that heroin benefits the Taliban and the US wants to put an end to it is a myth. Afghan heroin is and always has been a US deep state corporate enterprise to the bone. And if the Taliban do allow the US to continue to use their land to mass produce heroin, that is yet another piece of evidence supporting a deal between the Taliban and the West. Question number 4. Will there be any political fallouts? So what are the next steps? Where is this going? Well, in the United States, President Joe Biden is experiencing some pretty heavy flack. Even his usually stalwart supporters at CNN ran the headline, "Joe Biden is facing a crisis of competence." That was their headline, which could mean they are in the early stages of prepping us for President Kamala Harris. Geopolitically, the talk is of Russia and China, the only two countries to officially recognize the Taliban government, stepping into the void. This is being played as a victory for America's enemies and another stick with which to beat Biden. But does that really mean anything? The COVID pandemic has been an eye-opener in terms of conflict between nations. They have shown us that when they really need to, they work together to the same end. They tell the same lies, sell the same stories, and want the same thing. The wall at the back of the theater has been revealed in that regard. The truth is, no matter which nations notionally hold sway in Afghanistan, the profits from the war, the lithium, and the heroin will all end up going to the same few pockets. Corporations rule, not countries. Nation states are no longer the players of the great game. They are the pieces, toys for corporate megaliths. Their owners can make them fight each other or bump them together and make kissing noises, which is equally meaningless. Question number 5. Is there another refugee crisis on the way? The Afghanistan narrative will fuel other big narratives going forward. Firstly, there is the coming refugee crisis, the worst since World War II, according to Tobias Elwood, the MP who can always be relied upon to promote deep state talking points, which is weird because I'm sure that that's what they said about the refugee crisis in 2016 too. Oh, and in 2019. The UK's Defense Secretary has already announced plans to allow Afghan asylum seekers into Britain without passports. Angela Merkel is advocating for similar steps in Germany, and the US press is also on board. Will these refugees be forced to stay in quarantine hotels at their own expense? Have they all been double jabbed? We don't know. Nobody is thinking about that. That's from the other narrative. We are talking about refugees today. COVID can wait. Anybody opposing asylum seekers entering the country because of COVID will be branded a racist, and medical professionals will claim that racism is a public health issue, which is more dangerous than COVID. Just like they did when the COVID narrative collided with the Black Lives Matter narrative last summer. That importing asylum seekers undocumented from a near failed state could be suggested at all during an allegedly deadly pandemic is a sign of just how contrived both narratives are. It's not said much, but corporations love refugees. Just like illegal immigrants, undocumented refugees can be used as cheap labor with none of the legal protections of full citizens. They can be blamed for deteriorating living standards, unemployment, and wage stagnation. They act as a heat sink for public anger. Further, refugees with no passports are a great way to get your trained mercenaries, agitators, saboteurs, and or special forces across national borders without leaving a trail. Question number 6. Will we see a major terrorist attack? It's only been a few days since the fall of Kabul, but already the renewed terrorism threat is making waves in the press. The Sun, in its usual understated style, headlines, Red Alert, Britain faces direct threat of terrorism from Taliban's Afghan takeover in new wave of terror against the West. Well, a rather more sedate report in from AP says concerns over US terror threats rising as Taliban hold grows. The New York Times goes almost fully schizophrenic, reporting a decade ago, a US withdrawal from Iraq opened the door for the Islamic State. Will the withdrawal from Afghanistan do the same for the Taliban? And warning of other terror attacks in the future, without ever acknowledging that the US never withdrew from Iraq at all, or that they armed and trained ISIS. Bloomberg warns that the Taliban are already inspiring terror beyond Afghanistan. The Times is worried about the terrorist elite, the Taliban freed from Bagram prison. Project Syndicate reports that the world should not ignore the risk that Afghanistan under the Taliban could become a breeding ground for international terrorism. Politicians from France, the US, and UK been eager to talk it up too. The former head of NAFTA has said the West needs to bolster its terror defenses, while the chairman of the Joint Chiefs has said terror groups will reconstitute in Afghanistan faster than expected. And the UN is calling for the unity against the global terrorist threats. All of that in just the last 2 days. Does this mean we are going to see another major terrorist attack? Maybe, and maybe not. We are past due for one, certainly. But in many ways, the threat is just as effective as the attack itself. Now, in conclusion, to sum up the official narrative on US withdrawal from Afghanistan in bullet points. Number 1, Trump signed a deal with the Taliban over a year ago to withdraw from the country and hand over 5,000 prisoners. 2, despite having over a year to plan, the US withdrawal was chaotic and messy. under Joe Biden. 3. The US accidentally left behind weapons, helicopters, ammunition, and armored vehicles which the Taliban took. The US accidentally left behind 5,000 prisoners whom the Taliban freed. 5. Without US support, the Afghan army, which outnumbers and outguns the Taliban, folded without firing a shot, and the Taliban took control of the entire country in less than a week. And last one. Despite shutting down the heroin trade prior to the US invasion, the Taliban now intend to keep it going and even increase production. Do you believe this story? Is it all believable? Let me advise all of us. Ignore the sound and fury from the media. The press are like a street magician. If you want to understand what they are up to, you have to look past the hand he's waving in your face and look at the one behind his back. Here in Mystery Truth, we unveil the truth and we tell you the truth, not minding whose ox is God. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. Please, if you have anything to say, drop your comments in the comment section and don't forget to subscribe to this channel. Thank you very much.